7, contact tower 128.15.
Caution, caution. Manual, fuel, manual, fuel.
I'm John Goglia.
I'm Greg Fife.
And I'm Todd Curtis.
And we are the Flight Safety Detectives.
Between us, we have over a century of aviation accident investigation and safety experience to draw on as we discuss issues that affect all of us.
So we are qualified to share our perspectives on accidents and incidents and what can be learned from them for the future.
We're proud to say that we have two sponsors that really relate to the topic of aviation safety: the Professional Aviation Maintenance Association, or PAMA, and Avemco Insurance. Later on in the show, we'll tell you how you can get a 5% discount on your insurance just for listening to the show.
We don't just dissect the official reports. In every episode, we identify safety issues and take the mystery out of accident investigations.
So maybe pilots and their planes can have safer flights ahead. Well, hello, Todd.
Hello, John.
Here we are again. Greg is up to his neck in other stuff.
As always.
So it's you and I today, and we got a couple of events, non-accident type discussions, and I think everybody that's on the in aviation or on the fringes of aviation may find some of this interesting. Because there's a lot of things happening in this business on the sidelines that have drawn a lot of attention.
Indeed.
So today's show was brought to you by Avemco, and thought I would give them a little plug in. Nice people to do business with, I'll tell you that. I spent time in their facility. And of course, Pam has been with us from the very beginning. Having said all that, Todd, why don't you set up the scenario for today?
Well, before I do that, let me just remind all you folks out there who want to follow an Avemco example and actually work with as a sponsors. You'll see the email address below me, fsdsponsors@gmail.com. Write to us. We'll do what we can to put your product or service in front of our audience. And we're going to talk about a couple of things, a couple of them being recent accidents involving general aviation that may have involved some issues with the medical status of the pilots. But we have a semi-breaking news item. As many of you know, we've had several shows over the last few months, actually the last few years, talking about the safety aspects or safety issues around unidentified anomalous phenomena, and how one of the issues I had was that there was seemingly no real formal process within the FAA for pilots and air traffic controllers and others to report these and have them properly addressed. Well, I stumbled across a couple of items earlier this week, which basically says the following. As of Sunday, October 26th, the Air Traffic Control Organization within the FAA, those are the people who do the air traffic control and those who manage them, they have a new, very specific process in place to report UAP events. And also, they specified what sort of detail they want from those UAP reports. And if any of you had seen our earlier show about a particular event back in December of 2024, the kind of information that was in what was called a mandatory occurrence report, which I'd never seen before, is sort of information they're asking for now at the FAA. Bottom line, instead of having no way to find UAP reports that are officially recognized by the FAA, there might be in the next few months many, many more of these reports. And if they are available, we'll do our level best to get our hands on them and bring you our analysis. And for those of you watching, or those of you listening to the show, on the webpage about this episode, we will have links to the specific notices that went out to the Air Traffic Organization so you can read for yourself. And our two accidents today, we have two because we think they might have something in common. These are both general aviation accidents that happened earlier in 2025. One was a July 2025 accident involving a PA-28 Piper aircraft flying from upstate New York to Block Island, Rhode Island, an island just off the coast. Three people were on board, including the pilot. And during the landing, which, according to the preliminary report, the pilot was attempting a landing with a slight tailwind. There was no real explanation in the report as to why that was so. This was an airport that was untowered, but they did have an AWOS system that was broadcasting automated weather reports, including the wind at the time. So they're landing on runway 10. The wind was 7 knots at 230, so you had a bit of a tailwind. And they had three attempts. The pilot had three attempts at landing. Third attempt, unfortunately, the aircraft crashed. And at the time, the airplane landed about 1,500 feet down a 2,500-foot runway. And it was an estimated 174 feet above the runway when it crossed the runway threshold. In short, that sounds like an unstabilized report to me. Excuse me, unstabilized landing to me. In my small aircraft I fly, about the same size as this Piper, if I had a runway threshold crossing that was that high, I would abort the landing and try again. Because, especially on a 2,500-foot runway, which is the same runway at my home airport, I would be very, very uncomfortable landing anywhere close to even halfway down the runway, much less about 60% down the runway.
Yeah,
And
that was way too long to try to land it.
yeah,
So it's going to slide through the air. You're not going to get a lot of benefit with parasite drag.
and the second event, more recent, about a month ago, September 27, 2025, in Wallkill, New York, which is in upstate New York near Poughkeepsie. There was a single pilot, single occupant flying a Glass Air, a Super 2, which is a experimental aircraft, amateur built. There was a group of pilots flying up to Wallkill for lunch from New Jersey. And after lunch, there were 8 aircraft total. This was the last aircraft in the group to take off. Shortly after takeoff, it had a sharp turn to the left, hit a windsock pole, crashed, and the pilot was killed. And again, both are preliminary reports. The second one, it does not have even ADSB data for a very short flight at the end. The first one, we do have some ADSB data, which shows clearly that not only was this person landing in the direction that was discussed in the investigation, then you'll see from the graphic if you're watching the video. The thing that ties these two together, both pilots were older. The pilot in the Block Island event was 87. The pilot in the Wallkill, New York event was age 80, according to media reports. This is not officially from the FAA. It's from media reports about the events is where we got that age. And both were using BasicMed. Without going into detail, BasicMed is an alternative medical certification that general aviation pilots can use, which allows them to have a less intensive process for getting the medical certification in exchange for limitations as to what you can do and fly. For example, you can't fly instrument rated, you can't fly an aircraft with too large of a capacity, that sort of thing. And both of these gentlemen were in their 80s. And although there is nothing in the reports about their medical condition, one of the issues that has come up again and again when BasicMed became an official thing is this something that will allow or will not be able to address ongoing medical issues that a pilot might have? My last point on this, once you're at a certain age, and I'm at that certain age, when I get my third class medical, I have to get it renewed every 2 years. BasicMed is renewed every 4 years. My class 3 had to be certified by an aviation medical examiner, an AME, someone who is a physician, who is certified by the FAA to give clearances for that level of medical certificate. BasicMed, you can have a non-AME physician do the certification, and it's a much less intensive process. You fill out a form. Do you have this disease? Do you have this problem? You talk it over with your private physician or any other general physician, and you can get it signed off. So
Yeah.
you've been
But
around for the debate about the BasicMed as it was coming about. What are the issues that BasicMed had, even before we talk about these accidents? What are the pros and cons that might be relevant here?
Well, the first thing that popped into my mind is the FAA would not have done this. Congress did it. So they were probably under some intense lobbying pressure from a number of groups. All right, so that's step one. But the other part of it is, where's the individual accountability here? You're 87 years old. I mean, you're in trouble. You're at that age where something can happen rather quickly. And even the other guy at 80 years old, same thing. So, and the FAA sounds like they took some of that into consideration when they put it on. But I think that the FAA should have put on that they can't carry anybody. You want to go kill yourself, go kill yourself. But take unsuspecting family members or it's just somebody that you're going to provide transportation for and put them at much higher risk than they would with a regular, 60-year-old GA pilot. I mean, it's just there needs to be additional safeguards on there for basic med. And the other ones, I mean, it can happen to anybody at any time. I mean, that's the argument we're going to be hearing with the push for airline pilots to go to age 67. And they're saying, oh, we'll do every 6 months, we'll do a physical, and there's all sorts of things being said about trying to get the government to go from 65 to 67 for commercial airline pilots. I'm on the fence on all of that personally, because there's got to be a time limit for carrying passengers.
And beyond the time limit, there has to be a common sense limit. And this is not just an airplane situation. As we've discussed before on other shows, you can have someone who is driving a car and who is getting to a certain age where, because of debilitations and vision issues and other issues, they're not as good of a driver as they were when they were 67 or 57. That's a natural fact. How much degradation do you have to have in your capabilities before someone yanks the license out of your hand? When it comes to driver's licenses, unless you get into an accident or something, or a moving violation and such, no one official is going to come up and say, we're taking your license away. It's up to the person who holds that license, the close family members of that person, their friends and whatnot, to say, look, you've had a great life. You want to have a longer life? You can't drive anymore.
And that's painful. Like we did that with my father. It was very painful for him, but you got to do it when you get at that point where you no longer can drive reliably. Most of the time he was fine, but there was lapses almost every day. And those are warning signs.
And lapses, fatigue, etc., issues that pilots have tend to be worse when they're tired at the end of a flight versus the beginning of a flight. And in both cases, this was not the early part of the flight. In one case, they had gone cross country from, I believe, Albany, New York to just off the Atlantic coast, and they're coming in for landing. The pilot was taking two of his friends. The three of them were going to have lunch at Block Island, Rhode Island. Apparently, it's a nice lunch place and such. The pilot survived. One of the passengers was killed. So, in a sense, the NTSB is going to have much more information because you have a surviving pilot who can give more background as what went on. In the other case, you had someone flying an amateur-built aircraft. And, we're not knocking amateur-built aircraft. Any kind of aircraft can have an accident. But an amateur-built aircraft, a Glacier, tends to be different from, let's say, your standard Cessna or single-engine Piper, because the goal of that kind of aircraft is to be able to have something an individual could build, something that can be operated or built or purchased for a lower price than you can with a Cessna, and tends to be smaller than a Cessna. So I'm not 80 years old. I'm in my 60s, but getting into a cockpit is a bit more of a challenge than when I was in my 20s, in part because, you know, if I fall and bounce on something, it might take a lot longer to recover. So I tend to be much more focused getting into and out of the aircraft. And if I have an ache and pain in my knee or something, I'm saying to myself, well, I can stand this ache or pain for half an hour, but if I stay in this airplane any longer than that, my knee is going to bug me to the point where I'm not going to be paying attention as much as I should to the instrument. So should I just cut this flight short or not fly today? Didn't have that concern when I was 25.
Right, we think about distractions being cell phones or other people in the airplane, but aches and pains can also be a big distraction.
And in both cases, it was a social event in that the Block Island, Rhode Island event, the pilot was taking, three of them were friends. They were going out for lunch. And the other case, this was a group of 8 pilots who apparently were all in amateur-built airplane sort of organization who were flying as a group, fly in for lunch, which is a common thing. You get your airplane compatriots, you go out and have a little fun. And I don't know what kind of social pressure was happening with this pilot that he felt that with all the planning and all the effort that went into it, maybe he didn't want to disappoint his fellow pilots. This is speculation here, but it's not something where he was doing this for a job. It was not something that was on his own volition. This is something where people were depending on him. Even if the depending on him meant we're going to have you hanging out with us for lunch. Those are the kinds of external factors that can factor into a decision. Do I fly or do I not fly?
I continue to fly. The self-imposed pressure to get to an airfield, and maybe the conditions are not exactly perfect, or maybe they're challenging for your skill level, and you decide to push through because you've got pressure of meeting somebody. There's all kinds of pressure we put on ourselves.
Yeah, I don't know if the NTSB will ask these kinds of questions because, as we've said before in other broadcasts, some of the investigations leave a bit to be desired. But I looked at the fact that the one in upstate New York, you had a group of 8 aircraft flying back to wherever they departed from. I would ask questions like, okay, they left all at once. Were they going to be flying in some sort of formation? Were they relying on one of the crew, one of the other aircraft to provide most of the electronic navigational uh, information and they would radio it to the other pilots, so they had to stay as a group? Was this person the last one to leave because he had some issues with his airplane? Was he the last one to leave because this is what he always does? The fact that he was the last of 8 to take off, crashed almost immediately after takeoff, begs the question. Did the order of departure have something to do with the outcome of that flight?
Yeah, that's another good question that we'll probably never know, because we know the NTSB is, at this point in time, is not doing the best investigations that they've ever done for a number of reasons. So we'll probably never know. It's
And
just a shame that so many safety issues are going to be overlooked in trends. We're not going to be able to pick up trends either.
And this is more speculation on my part. One of the accidents took place in July, which was about 4 months before we are speaking about it now. Actually, about 3 months before we're discussing it today. The other one happened about 4 days before the government shutdown, which began, I believe, at the beginning of October of this year. So one of the questions is, and we asked this before, during this shutdown stage of the federal government, the NTSB is still active. They've had a crew, several of them, going over to Hong Kong for a major accident that happened a week or so ago. But how is the investigation of, I wouldn't say less important, different, I'll say it. It's not top of mind like the crash of a 747. You have 2 general aviation aircraft, one of them an amateur built, both of them involving smaller airports, didn't affect traffic at a major airport, no mid-air collision with an airline or nothing like that. This is the kind of accident that unfortunately happens on a regular basis. And given the circumstances of these accidents, what's the priority going to be with putting resources into these accidents to address key issues? And in my opinion, I think yours too, the key issue is these are both older pilots who are flying under BasicMed. Is there something about the rules of BasicMed that allowed these pilots to fly when they shouldn't have? Or if it's not the case, should BasicMed be looked at anyway in the light of these two, especially if they cannot get a full story as to what exactly was going on with these pilots before and during the flight?
Yeah, just a lot of questions that probably will never be answered. We'll see a preliminary report at some point, and it'll probably die right there.
Now, one last point on the current shutdown. As many of you know, certain categories of government employees are required to keep working, even if they're not getting paid. One of those groups is air traffic controllers. Another group are the TSA security officers. There hasn't been much in the way of controversy about the TSA officers, but there has been some controversy with air traffic controllers. There have been several cases, including just a few days ago in Washington, D.C., where because of staffing concerns, certain air traffic facilities couldn't be staffed fully, and some flights were delayed, including flights of representatives and senators. And when that sort of thing happens, or if you have flight delays at major airports like New York or Los Angeles, it tends to be a news item. Now, this is not a strike on the part of the air traffic controllers because they can't strike. This is not an illegal sick out or anything like that where people are, saying I'm not coming to work and they're not really sick. This is one of those things where, for whatever reason, don't know what that reason is, you don't have as many air traffic controllers as you would before the shutdown. I don't know if it's a pipeline thing. Maybe the Air Traffic FAA Academy is not graduating people during this time, or other promotions aren't happening. So slots can't be filled because the mechanism for doing so is on hold during the shutdown. But I'd like to know, and I don't know. Why is air
I heard
traffic
the
controllers?
FAA Academy is not, is shut down. So they've stopped classes at the academy. And on the flight standard side, I heard this morning that they furloughed a number of people within the flight standards operation. So they've got to reduce staff at flight standards. And ironically, flight standards goes to every accident, whether the NTSB goes or not. So I'm sure that the lack of manpower there is going to have an impact on if the FAA goes to look at some of these general aviation accidents, especially if they occur in remote airports and remote locations. So we have impacts all over the place on our safety systems. They're being strained and pulled and twisted and just challenged in a whole number of places. So,
So we have
but
no official opinion on the political aspects of what's going on. We do have a practical opinion. We need to have this aspect of government operating as well as it can. And when you're not paying people, there's going to be some obvious issues there that no matter what your political persuasion is, the money's not coming in, and you're a professional, you have to make decisions. And one would hope those decisions would put their profession first and foremost, but their families are important too. So that's my only comment there.
yeah, I think it's going to come to a head here in a few days because now they're talking about ending the filibuster in the Senate. And that's what the Democrats are doing. They're putting the filibuster up so that you can't vote. They don't have enough votes. Filibusters are 60 votes. So Republicans have 53 votes in favor of, they actually have 54. They have one Democrat that's voted. And in fact, my senator here in Massachusetts is now saying we need to end it. So, and they vote on this shutdown every single day.
And as we speak right now, it is October 31st, and it's likely that this particular episode won't be available on YouTube until possibly the middle of November. So I have a perfect second to last word. I hope that when you see this for the first time, as soon as it comes out, a couple of Wednesdays from now, there is no strike. Air traffic controllers are back to work. People are getting paid, and aviation safety will not be affected.
Boy, let's hope that's a mouthful. But we are in unprecedented times with our government and our agencies, and the impact that's having across the board is considerable. And it'll probably be critical soon. They're talking about food stamps of 40 million families rely upon those food stamps, and then tomorrow there's no food stamps. So it's going to be pretty challenging. So keep tabs on your neighbors. Make sure that we don't lose people for some of our stupid actions that we take in Washington, D.C. All right, so is that your second and the last word?
Well, I gave my second to last word already. I'll let you have the last word, as always.
Yeah. And I will continue to say it because it just pops up over and over again. If you're going to go flying, please pre-plan twice. Do it before you go to the airport and do it when you get to the airport. And if they don't agree, find out why. And when you get out to your airplane, do a good pre-flight. You can't believe how bad some of the pre-flights are. I watch them all the time. I watch them I flew this week. I was out all week. And I watch people, even commercial airline guys, doing their walkarounds. And although I watched two yesterday, and they weren't bad, but I did notice that they didn't pay much attention to one landing gear. Both guys missed the same landing gear, two different airplanes. So I don't know what that's all about. And of course, the airplanes that are very low to the ground, meaning you have to get down on your knees to look under the airplane. I see that routinely. The pilots and they walk around don't get down and don't look. They just assume everything's all right. Not a good procedure. So anyway, please do a good pre-flight. When you get in the air, today you've got to put that head on the swivel. The number of near misses, and now without the tower maybe not having all the bodies that it had before, it may have the minimum staffing to continue. You might not have that second set of eyes that can help you and keep you posted of what's going on around you. So you got to be much more vigilant today, given the condition of air traffic control than we were just a month ago. So please pay attention to detail. It's always the little things that cause big problems. And pay attention to the little things and maybe you won't have the big problem. And please fly safely.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. We really value all of our listeners and subscribers. Our podcast gets ranked by you. So if you like this, give us 5 stars inside your podcast platform.
We want to keep the conversation going with you. So we'd love for you to engage with us on our social media channels. We're on Instagram, X, Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course, YouTube.
You can email the show at flightsafetydetectives@gmail.com. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, we're working on growing this channel, and it really helps if you all comment. So please do that. We read them all.
And be sure to subscribe. Based on Avemco claims data, did you know that 10% of aircraft accidents happen while taxiing? Does this number surprise you? Avemco Insurance Company values safety and believes strongly in continuous pilot training and education to help prevent these accidents and promote safer skies for everyone. That's why they sponsor the Fast Team Wings program and the Flight Safety Detectives podcast. Avemco rewards safer pilots with premium credits through their Safety Rewards program. Earn an automatic 5% off by mentioning you're one of our listeners. Call 888-879-0389 for a free quote or visit avemco.com/flightsafety.